Hello, dear listener. Welcome to a softer world, a place far away from the hum of the present day. Tonight, we're going to journey gently to the ancient lands of Rome, but not to the thundering colosseums nor the halls of power, not to war or conquest or great affairs of state. No, tonight we slip quietly into something much more peaceful, the art of Roman gardening. Simple, grounded, green, a soft rhythm of watering pots, shady fig trees, and terracotta jars warmed by the sun. So, let your thoughts settle like dust in a quiet courtyard. Let your breath slow, your shoulders soften, and your eyes grow heavy. Imagine lying in a shaded villa garden, vines curling above you, and the warm scent of rosemary drifting on the breeze. Let's begin. In ancient Rome, gardens were more than patches of earth. They were sanctuaries, spaces where nature, philosophy, and daily life met in gentle harmony. To walk through a Roman garden was to walk through an idea, a reflection of balance, care, and cultivated beauty. They called it a hortus. In the earliest days, the Roman garden was modest, just a simple plot behind a home, growing onions, herbs, beans, and maybe a few grapevines. But even then, there was intention, rows laid straight, a path of smooth stones for barefoot walks, and perhaps a rough bench shaded by a laurel tree. Later, when wealth allowed, gardens bloomed into more elaborate forms. Walled peristyle gardens with central fountains, marble statues peeking from rose bushes, and olive trees in perfect rows, their leaves fluttering like silver coins in the sun. Whether large or small, these gardens were places of quiet devotion to beauty, to order, and to the slow rhythm of living things. And so we begin. Beneath the shade of a Roman pergola, grapevines coiling above, bees humming lazily nearby, and the air warm with the scent of thyme. The Roman gardener, or hortulanus, was both laborer and artist. With simple tools, wooden rakes, iron hoes, curved knives, they shaped the earth with care. There was no rush, only the quiet attention to planting, watering, pruning, and waiting. Tools were stored in clay-tiled sheds or under lean-tos, a scythe for trimming grass, a small amphora filled with water, a wicker basket for gathering ripened figs or cut basil. A day might begin before the sun, while the dew was still fresh on the leaves. A gardener would kneel, pressing fingers into the soil to feel its moisture. Then, perhaps, they would hum, a soft tune carried from mother to daughter, or from an old farmhand to his apprentice. There was something deeply Roman in this care. Even emperors like Marcus Aurelius found time to tend their private gardens, a reminder that all greatness must also root itself in the earth. And while the city beyond buzzed with markets and politics, here there was only the hush of growing things, the crunch of footsteps on gravel, the sigh of leaves touched by the breeze. The Roman garden was not only a place to grow food or flowers, it was a place to feel alive. Lavender and mint were planted near benches so that a seated guest might brush their hand across the leaves and release their perfume. Rosemary for remembrance, violets for their soft purple touch, and bay laurel, sacred to Apollo, for its symbolism and scent. Fruit trees added another layer. Figs heavy with sweetness, pomegranates blushing red, and lemons hanging like little suns from their branches. In spring, the garden would bloom in soft layers of color, iris and crocus, poppy and chamomile, and all around the gentle hum of bees, the slow trickle of a small fountain, and the fluttering of linen curtains in a warm breeze. To walk here was to walk through a living painting, one shaped by hand and season, by patience and love. Behind many Roman homes, especially in the countryside, there was a hortus, a humble kitchen garden. Here the focus was not on statues or fountains, but on food, on nourishment. on the quiet cycle of tending and harvesting. The soil was rich, often dark from compost and ash. Raised beds were framed with stones or woven willow, and narrow paths wound between patches of tender green. In early spring, lettuce and leeks pushed their way upward. By midsummer, there were cucumbers curling on vines and soft-stemmed beans climbing poles beside the garden wall. The Romans loved variety: parsley for seasoning, fennel for its sweet bite, garlic to ward off the cold, and radishes for a bit of spice. Some plants served more than one purpose, like dill, both a flavoring and a medicine, or chicory, pulled up in autumn and roasted as a gentle digestive. Children might help with watering, carrying small ceramic pots filled from a nearby cistern. An old grandmother might sit beneath a fig tree, plucking weeds with slow fingers and watching the clouds drift over the red-tiled roofs. The kitchen garden was a rhythm, a quiet returning, a reminder that life, even in the heart of empire, always began with the earth. To the Romans, gardening was not just a task. It was a quiet dance with nature's deeper rhythms. Many farmers and gardeners believed in planting by the moon. Under a waxing moon, when light grew in the sky, they sowed seeds meant to grow above the ground, like lettuce, peas, and grapes. Under a waning moon, when the light faded, they planted roots, onions, garlic, and carrots. It was not superstition to them, but a kind of wisdom, a way of listening to the quiet signals of the world. They timed their work with the turning of the seasons. Spring brought the calends of March, a sacred time for pruning vines. Summer meant careful watering, often at dawn or dusk. Autumn was for gathering, storing, and thanking the land. Even the tools were handled with reverence. Blades were cleaned and sharpened by oil lamplight. Seed jars were kept in dark, cool rooms, each labeled with quiet care in wax or charcoal. To tend a Roman garden was to be part of something ancient and invisible, a slow current of time and tending that stretched across generations. You might hear it in the rustle of leaves at night, or the low call of an owl from an olive grove beyond the wall. As Roman gardens became more refined, water became their centerpiece. In the homes of the wealthy, fountains bubbled softly, not for drinking but for delight. They whispered into silence, cooling the air and inviting stillness. Some were simple basins carved from marble, with gently arching spouts and goldfish gliding beneath. Others were grander, tiered structures adorned with statues of nymphs and gods, fed by hidden channels from nearby aqueducts. To sit beside a Roman fountain in midsummer was to sit in another world. The air shimmered with light. The scent of cypress and jasmine drifted on the wind, and always that soft sound of water falling, rhythmic, eternal, like a lullaby of stone. Children might chase butterflies between lily pools. A poet might recline on a shaded bench, scribbling verses about Venus or the soft curve of a vine. Even a passing moment of wind, sending ripples across the surface, felt like a divine gesture, a gentle breath from the gods. Even in the heart of Rome itself, where buildings pressed close and the air was thick with noise, the Romans found ways to keep a touch of nature nearby. Most lived in apartments, insulae they were called, stacked stone dwellings above busy streets. Yet even there, amidst the chatter of markets and the rumble of carts, you could find little patches of green. A windowsill might cradle a few clay pots, basil perhaps, or rue. Balconies hung with grapevines trained along ropes. A narrow courtyard tucked between walls, where a single rosebush grew tall, leaning toward the light. In wealthier homes, those with their own courtyards, small gardens flourished in the space called the atrium. Here a skylight let in the sun, and rain fell into a shallow pool. Surrounding that pool, you might find lemon trees, tiny beds of violets, or climbing ivy tracing the columns. Neighbors might trade cuttings of mint or clippings of bay. Children watered them with leftover bathwater, and old men smoked their pipes nearby, watching the green grow. In these quiet city corners, gardening was not grand or showy. It was modest, quiet, tender. And in those little pots and planters, Rome breathed softly. For the Romans, the garden was more than a place of beauty. It was also a place of the sacred. Certain plants were believed to carry meaning, and to grow them was to invite the gods into one's home. The laurel tree was sacred to Apollo, its leaves used to crown poets and emperors alike. To grow a laurel near the door was a quiet prayer for wisdom and victory. The fig tree was beloved by many gods, but especially Bacchus, god of wine and revelry. To plant one was to honor fertility, abundance, and sweet, easy joy. Olive trees were more than useful. They were near holy. Athena herself, the Greeks said, gifted the first olive tree to humankind, and so Romans planted olives with reverence and harvested their fruit with care. There was also rosemary, long associated with memory and protection. It was burned during rituals, placed in tombs, and tucked under pillows to ward off nightmares. In temple gardens, some plants were never touched. They were left to grow wild as a gift to the divine, swaying gently in the wind, untouched by shears or hand. To garden in this way was not only to feed the body, but to nourish the soul. The Roman calendar was full of quiet celebrations, and many of them centered around the land and its gifts. There was the Floralia, a festival of flowers held in spring. People wore garlands, danced through fields, and scattered petals in fountains and courtyards. At the Saturnalia, gardens were decorated with evergreen branches, a reminder that life continued even in winter's hush. And during the Robigalia, held in late April, farmers offered wheat and incense to Rabigus, a spirit who protected crops from disease. Children sang simple songs as they carried small baskets of grain, and gardeners whispered blessings as they sowed their fields. Even in private homes, seasonal rituals continued. A sprig of laurel over the threshold at New Year, a bowl of fresh herbs placed by the kitchen hearth at midsummer. It wasn't loud, it wasn't grand. But in these moments, these quiet gestures, the garden became something more. A space not just for plants, but for presence. Now the sun has begun to fall behind the hills. The light fades from gold to rose, and then into quiet lavender. The garden shifts too. The bees grow still. The fountains seem quieter. The shadows lengthen along the stone paths. A gentle breeze stirs the vines above. You can hear the soft creak of a wooden bench and the last call of a bird from the olive grove. A lantern is lit near the kitchen, just one. Its light flickers across the herbs, and in the garden everything feels slower now, more hushed, more ancient. You might lie on a cushion in the grass, eyes closed, hands behind your head, feeling the warmth of the day still lingering in the stones beneath you. The fig trees sway, the grapevines rustle gently above, and the moon begins her rise. This is how the Romans ended their day, in stillness, in softness, with the earth beneath them and the stars beginning to bloom above. And so we end ours. So now, dear listener, you can let your eyes drift closed. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to tend. Just the garden and the night, the hum of silence, the softness of soil, and the distant stars watching from above. Sleep well among fig trees and fountains. Sleep in a garden older than memory. Good night.